All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really crucial piece of law, one that was basically forged in fire, Indonesia's bankruptcy law. Now, I know bankruptcy law might sound a bit dry, but trust me, if you want to understand how business really works in one of Southeast Asia's powerhouse economies, you've got to understand this. So this law from 2004, it wasn't just some small update. No, this was a complete overhaul. It totally changed the game for how financial trouble is handled, giving the country a modern legal tool for its fast-growing economy. And to really get why this law even exists, you have to go back in time. You can actually see it right there in the law's own introduction. It points straight to the chaos of the Asian financial crisis in the late 90s. The entire economy was in a tailspin, and the old rules for handling debt, they couldn't cope. Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll touch on the crisis that sparked the whole thing. Then we'll get to know the key players and terms. After that, we'll look at the actual path to bankruptcy, the court's super tight timeline, and finally, what happens the moment a decision is made. All right, let's jump in. All right, first section. Let's talk about the why behind this law because, laws like this don't just pop up out of nowhere. They're usually a response to a really big problem. So picture this. You're trying to fix a modern supercomputer with a wrench from the 19th century. That's pretty much what was happening in Indonesia. They were facing this massive modern financial meltdown using old colonial-era Dutch laws. It was a disaster. The system was just totally overwhelmed, creating this kind of legal black hole where nothing could get resolved. The whole economy was grinding to a halt. It was obvious they needed a brand new playbook, and they needed it yesterday. Okay. So before we dive into how it all works, we got to get the vocabulary down. Meet the cast of characters. The law lays them all out for us right in Article 1. First up, the big one, kepailitan, which is just bankruptcy. But here's the key thing. It's not just, admitting you can't pay your debts. Under this law, it's an immediate general seizure of literally all your assets. The second that ruling comes down, bam, the court takes over everything you own. Then you've got the debitor or the debtor. Pretty straightforward, right? This can be an individual person or a huge company. They're the one at the heart of it all, the one who owes the money and can't pay up. And on the flip side, you have the creditor, the creditor. This is whoever is owed the money. Could be a big bank, could be a small supplier who delivered goods and never got paid, anyone who has a legal claim to that debt. And last but not least, the curator or curator. The easiest way to think of the curator is as the court-appointed referee. Their job is to step in, take control of all the assets, and make sure the whole process is handled by the book, so everything is settled fairly. Okay, so we've met the players. Now let's get into the game. How does this whole thing actually kick off? What does it take to land someone in bankruptcy court? And this is where it gets really interesting. The bar for starting a bankruptcy case is, well, it's surprisingly low. You don't need to be millions in debt to a dozen banks. According to the law, all you need is 2 or more creditors, and you fail to pay just one single debt that's due. That's it. That's the trick. So who can actually start this process? Well, it can go a few ways. The debtor can actually file for bankruptcy themselves. That's the voluntary route. More often, though, it's a creditor who gets tired of waiting and forces the issue. And in some special cases, where it's a matter of public interest, the government itself can step in and kick things off. Now, remember how the old system was a legal black hole? A huge reason for that was that cases would just drag on forever. This new law was specifically designed to fix that. It introduces a really strict, fast-track timeline that you just can't argue with. And here it is. This timeline shows you just how serious they were about speed. The second that petition is filed, a countdown begins. The court has to set a hearing date within 3 days, that hearing has to happen within 20 days, and the whole thing, from start to finish, has to have a final decision in just 60 days. It's incredibly fast. Yeah, that 60-day number is maybe the single most important part of this entire law. It's an absolute deadline. What it does is it forces everyone to the table and guarantees a resolution. No more cases getting lost in the system for years and years. It's all about providing certainty, fast, for everybody involved. Okay, so the 60 days are up. The judge slams the gavel down. Someone has just been declared bankrupt. What happens next? What are the immediate consequences? Well, the first thing is swift and it's absolute. The law is crystal clear on this. From the very second that verdict is read, the debtor loses all legal right to control or manage their assets, period. It's no longer their stuff to manage. Control is gone, just like that. So what exactly gets taken? The The law calls it the bankruptcy estate. And basically, it's everything. All the assets the debtor has at that moment, plus anything else they might acquire while the bankruptcy is ongoing. But the law isn't totally heartless. It does carve out some really important exceptions. We're talking about things needed for daily life, your work tools, your bed, even a 30-day food supply for your family. So there are some basic protections built in. And this is where our curator comes back into the picture. With the debtor out of the way, the curator steps in and takes the wheel. And their first job is absolutely critical. They freeze everything. They hit a giant pause button on any other lawsuits or collection attempts against the debtor. This stops it from becoming a total free-for-all, with creditors scrambling to grab assets. Instead, the curator manages an orderly, fair process to sell things off and pay people back. So when you look at the whole picture, what is this law really about? Is it just a harsh final measure, or is it a way to find a clean slate? The truth is, it's kind of both. For creditors, it's a fast and powerful way to get their money back. For debtors, it's definitely a tough road, but it is a structured, final way out of a financial nightmare. It really shows you what happens when a legal system has to create rules to deal with the messy reality of an economic crisis.